Hello all. Welcome to Impetus 2020. We are starting the Global Summit on Artificial Intelligence in Journalism, organized by the Department of Media Studies and Quality Assurance Cell of Christnagar College, Trivandrum, Kerala, India. This summit is in association with AI Journalism for Research and Forecasting, UAE. I am Manju Mathews, Head of the Department of Media Studies, Christnagar College, Maranello, Trivandrum. On behalf of the Principal, Dr. Jolie Jacob, Director and Manager, Reverend Dr. Tito Verghese CMI, Program Coordinator, Emil Abraham, Tara CB, Reverend Father Tinto Pulinjuvelil, Nino PK, and our student coordinators, Gauri S. Dev and Anup Dev Show. We welcome the speakers, Professor Vasudeva Varma, Professor Charlie Beckett, Francisco Marconi, and participants to the opening day of Global Summit on Artificial Intelligence in Journalism. Dr. Mohammed Abdul Sahi, the CEO of AIJRF, our co-organizer, is also here with us. We have participants joining in from all across India. We also have participants from Australia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, Oman, Bahrain, UAE, Namibia, UK, Estonia, Russia, Brazil, Portugal, Philippines, Yemen, and United States. The participants include media students, media educators, researchers, journalists, media, and artificial intelligence professionals. It is inspiring to see your interest for the emerging technologies shaping the future of journalism. Impetus 2020 is the first edition of our annual event bringing together thought leaders in journalism, media, and emerging technologies. I kindly request Gauri S. Dev, our final year journalism student, to welcome all on behalf of the students. Gauri recently got selected to moderate the third Global Constructive Journalism Conference scheduled on the 15th and 16th December. The conference is hosted by the Constructive Institute at Aarhus University, Denmark. Gauri, please.
Good evening. A warm welcome to all. I am Gauri S. Dev, undergraduate student on Media Studies at Christnagar College. We are here for the very first day of virtual Global Summit on Artificial Intelligence on Journalism, organized by Department of Media Studies and IIIT Christnagar College, Thiruvananthapuram, India, in association with AI Journalism for Research and Forecasting, UAE. Today we have three special speakers: Professor Vasudeva Varma, Professor IIIT Hyderabad, India, the CEO of IIIT Hyderabad, which run as one of the largest technology incubators in India. Charlie Beckett, Director of Pulse Journalism AI, London School of Economics and Political Science, UK. He is currently leading the Google DNA Journalism and AI Research Project. Third speaker is Francisco Marconi, author of the book named Newsmaker, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Journalism. He is also a computational journalist and co-founder of Uplight 11 USA. He has previously D&R chief at the Wall Street Journal, and he co-led the content automation and artificial intelligence effort. I heartily welcome all the three prestigious speakers on behalf of our students and participants, and I also heartily welcome all the participants to the Global Summit. Thank you all.
Thank you, Gauri. That was a charming welcome. The advancements in computing technologies have significantly impacted media industry, and AI technologies are powering another wave of changes. News organizations around the world have started to adopt artificial intelligence to change the way how news is generated, produced, published, and shared. By using advanced algorithm and machine learning tools, journalists can handle large data to provide greater insights and solutions. Artificial intelligence is providing tools to counter fake news, personalize news feeds, and scan social media for stories. The conventional mode of journalism is already disrupted, and the changes with artificial intelligence and machine learning is set to have profound impact in media organizations. As news organizations starts adopting AI technologies, the journalists and media students need to develop a new set of skills and to effectively use the evolving technology and tools. There is a growing fear that AI shall replace journalists and news will be completely automated. This global summit brings together world's best thought leaders and authors who firmly believe that AI technologies are going to transform journalism for good and set to provide great tools for journalists to excel. The 3-day summit shall also provide information on the training and skill building avenues for anyone interested in AI technologies shaping journalism and media industry. We will be having the sessions of 3 consecutive Thursdays starting from today. Our first speaker is Professor Vasudeva Varma. Professor Vasudeva Varma is a professor and former Dean of Research at International Institute of Information Technology, Hyderabad. His research interests are in the broad areas of information retrieval, extraction and access, more specifically, processing, social media analysis, cross-language information access, summarization, and semantic search. Professor Vasudeva Varma also works in the areas of cloud computing and reuse in software engineering. He is also the CEO of IIIT Hyderabad Foundation, which runs one of the largest technology incubators in India. The foundation manages IIIT Hyderabad's IP and technology transfers. Professor Varma has recently received Google Award for his AI project, Project Angel, which uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and neuro-linguistic programming to turn social media scrape words or phrases which are tantamount to bullying or hate speech to protect young social media users, especially teenage girls, from online toxicity. He has demonstrated how AI can be used for good. Professor Varma is passionate about how AI and ML can be effectively used in journalism and media. For the kind information of participants, you can ask questions to the speakers. The link is shared in the chat box. Our moderators, Tara CB and Inu PK, shall pick the questions and ask to the speakers. Welcome, Professor Vasudeva Varma. The title of the presentation is Computational Journalism, Narrative Sciences, and the Future of News.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Dr. Mathews. And it's my pleasure to be with all of you, all the budding journalists across the world. And it's, I think, no better time in the history than actually talking about the importance of creating honest, great, and truthful stories that are relevant to everyone, right? There is no greater time than this. So I would like to really bring your attention to how the technology is changing our world. And maybe let me just share my screen so that somehow you'll be able to follow what I'm trying to really talk about here. I hope you are able to see my screen now.
Yes, sir. You can make it full screen.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it fine?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Thank you. So the computational journalism, narrative sciences are two components that we would like to use to enrich the art of storytelling, right? So that should define the future of news. And let's see how that future is going to be. So that's the theme. I just would like to draw your attention to this small picture here, right? So there's nothing new to you. So if there is a news production, if the news story that is coming out, obviously there is the one who is creating that story, who is writing, researching, and then putting it in a shape that is very easily consumable and useful, right, to the audience. So there's a creator of the story, and there is also, of course, the audience of the story, right? So the audience is you and me who is going to read that story. And we also have editors who make sure that the right stories get the right prominence in the space that is available, whether it is a screen or it is a newspaper or it's a video program, anything of that kind, right? Then in addition to the creators, audience, and the editor, we also have other contributors who would suddenly, we actually play a major role in terms of identifying what is the role of this story in the larger setting. For example, how would the ad revenues would come if this particular story is broadcasted or it's published, right? What is the relevance of this to the other the stakeholders of the news world, right? So generally, these are the four important components on which this entire the news world is built. So obviously, I don't have to tell this to you. You already know uh, all of these pillars in a lot more detail than I do. But then what happened recently is this all four is clubbed into one. And that one role is being played, the role of creator, role of contributor, role of editor, role of reader or audience is now being played by each one of us. So each one of us is a creator of a story, reader of a story, and editor of a story, and also playing the other aspects of contributing to the monetization and all other aspects. So this is a very tricky situation that we are in. So why is the situation very new? If this is the evolution of the web, World Wide Web. In the traditional web, what we used to call internet, there used to be the writers and consumers of information. The creators or writers of the information has to be very, very few. And then the readers or the consumers of the information used to be very large. Small set of writers, a large set of readers. So that's the world that we are very familiar with. But then with Web 2.0 or a social web, we got into a world where everybody is a consumer as well as the contributor of information. And then there are a lot of actions that we perform in social web. We like, we dislike, we comment, we forward, we recommend, bunch of actions that all of us perform. And these actions indirectly make us as collectively as editors. So we are editing the information, telling the consumer that this is important, this is not so important. This particular piece of news is trending because I read the story. Indirectly, I'm telling the world by reading the story or by liking that particular story that this is an important story. So that I'm performing function of an editor, right? Of course, the audience and creator part is very, very clear. And of course, the monetization is very clear artifact of this entire participatory ecosystem of social web or web 2.0 as we know it, right? Now, this is a completely changed world. So everybody and anybody can be any one of those roles playing at different times or all at the same time. So that is a tricky situation that we are in, right? So in this situation, the old style of uh, working on content and then publishing it, and so many of those things are actually changing. And then there is a fear. The elephant in the room is that the traditional the journalist roles may disappear, and then the bots or the AI robots will actually create all the stories, and then we are here to just to consume what is being created. So that's a valid fear, but in fact, the whole thing can be changed, is going to be changed, provided we all collectively understand what the technology is and then take this technology in our hands and then do something about it. Why? Because it's the most important part. It's not about who created the content, but what the content is. So content is king. If a great story is being told by a human or a bot, it doesn't matter. But what matters is how is the story? Is it interesting? Is it important? Is it having any biases? No. How good is the quality of the story? Right? So this is the fundamental truth. No matter what, we all need to really go from this first principle of recognizing that content is king, right? So now, given that there are other ways that we need to really understand the changing world and then understand what are the technologies that are around us that are helping us people create great stories with the help of technology or computers, AI, ML, and all those things, right? So I wanted to basically introduce to you some of the technologies that are part of this computational journalism. One aspect, very important aspect, is the ability to crawl and scrape data that is relevant to whatever that you are doing. So web crawling and web scraping technologies are very, very critical. And these days, these are actually taken for granted. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, right? There are all these search engines and also domain-specific search technologies that would gather all the data and that is being made available for anybody who is working on news stories. Now, the second important thing that is actually coming as a baseline for the journalism field is the art of news aggregation, news summarization, and news personalization. So we're going to talk about some of these things later, but an important element here is the aggregation of news. For example, there are thousands of publishers publishing hundreds of thousands of stories every hour in the world. Then obviously, when you are consuming a story, it's very important to aggregate these stories and then develop the capability to present these stories in a manner that is interesting to the consumer, right? So that's the kind of core technology that is there as part of news aggregation. And there is another aspect here. There is a recommendation systems that play a major role in news aggregation. So these days, as you know, the major media houses are not something like New York Times or Washington Post or Guardian or even Disney, none of those, right? The biggest media houses today are Facebook and Google. So more and more people are consuming news not by going to nytimes.com or timesofindia.com or any other news sources directly, but then they're reading the news feed from Facebook and say Google, right? Or Apple News. So why? That means all these technology companies have invested heavily into this news aggregation business. That's an interesting question you should ask. And then another interesting question that you should ask is, how do you really survive in this world where aggregation is perhaps determining what kind of content that is going to be consumed? Then how do I get into that particular top N news stories that would be selected by these platforms? And can we do anything to really counter the dominance of these platforms? So these are all the important questions. I'm not going to offer any answers now, but I certainly recommend you to look into some of these, right? Then there are a bunch of other technologies, for example, detecting the topics. I want to know all the topics, all the news that is coming in for a particular topic on, say, Bihar elections or elections that are happening in, say, in Pennsylvania at this particular point in time, right? So automatically using this topic detection and getting me all the stories. So this is an important, it's different from the search technologies, by the way. Those details we'll get in later. So there is sentiment analysis and opinion mining kind of technologies where one would be able to understand what each of these stories are talking about in terms of sentiments. Are they pro certain party or they are against a particular party, right? A particular person, right? So what is the sentiment? The polarity, positive, neutral, negative. And then also opinion mining is an important thing. So what are the opinions, bunch of opinions that are actually coming from any published source, whether it is news or otherwise, right? So unfortunately, instead of fact reporting, there are opinions that are being reported. And then these opinions needs to be detected in order to distinguish from a good story, a good story from a bad story, right? Then other peripheral technologies that include video analysis, like essentially not just understanding the textual stories, but also the video stories. We got into a position where we are able to understand speech and video in a very coherent manner, in a very accurate manner that will tell us in terms of the semantic analysis, in terms of the meaning that is being sort of conveyed by these videos that are coming as news from the news broadcasting agencies. And bunch of other technologies that will tell us about how do you visually present a story automatically. With the use of technology, can you create infographics? Can you create interesting graphs, charts, and then illustrations without you being, an artist or a designer? What can you do as a journalist? So a bunch of technologies in the visual aspects of news that would help you achieve many of these interesting aspects. Then, of course, natural language processing, NLP, is a major technology that is helping the journalist society, the journalist community, in order to understand the news stories at a larger depth. So computational linguistics or natural language processing that would help us analyze the text or a news story at the sentence level, at a paragraph level, at the news level, and giving us the linguistic analysis as well as the semantic analysis. So this analysis we will use in order to kind of do several things on top of the all the news feed that we get, right? And finally, we all heard about citizen journalism, where people are censors and anybody can go and create a snippet or a story that is in a short form. For example, you're going in a road, then there is a accident, you just record that and then upload. And that becomes a very valuable source for those people who are weaving stories or rather creating a larger story where they insert your clip. So you as a censor, every citizen as a censor going and then capturing information, and then that can be used by others in creating stories that are actually on the ground, that originated from the ground. So what are the tools? What are the techniques, platforms that can be used to enable the citizen journalism? So these are a small set of technologies that are enriching computational journalism today, right? So there are a bunch of things that we do at IIIT Hyderabad. I wanted to mention that we have a center for AI, which is called as Kohli Center on Knowledge Systems, KCIS. Uh, in that, there are a group that is focused on computational journalism, and this particular group works on ways in which we can analyze stories. For example, how do we detect the social signals for the news? What are the likes? How many likes are there? How many shares are there? So any social signals, how many people are talking about a particular story? Can we get all that information, right? And then, of course, figuring out the long tail of the stories, determining what is important, what is interesting in a given story, news recommendation algorithms. How do you recommend a news story given that you read 5 stories? What should be your 6th story? Now, can we actually model a user and then recommend the next story based on the interests that are captured by the pattern that we find? And then, of course, generating personalized news feeds. These are all, we can club all of them as bunch of technologies that analyze news consumption and then news feeds that are available to us. Then second set of technologies are detecting fake news and misinformation related stories. So fake news, as you know, it became a big menace, and then we need to really counter that fake news. What are the technologies that are available so that you as a journalist, as a story writer, are able to distinguish between information and misinformation, right? So things of that kind. Then detecting weird and bizarre news. So bizarre news has a really interesting life cycle. They're not the stories of the season. They don't die after 24 hours. These bizarre stories can come later. So what makes something as a bizarre story, a weird story? What makes something as a clickbait? So automatically detecting all these kinds of stories is an important challenge that we have faced, and then we have solved many of these problems. And then other thing is speech recognition for news. For example, you are a journalist, in a remote village reporting a story, and then you don't have any other means that has to go to the publishing desk right away. Then can you actually pick up your regular phone and call a number, and then which actually recognizes your speech, whichever the language that you're speaking in, and then formulates a story and actually comes up with a story which will be immediately sent to the editor, who can do certain modifications and push the story. So this is specialized speech recognition programs in the news domain. So that's one important area. And the other one is the speech synthesis. For example, how do you read out the stories, say, for visually impaired people? And in special situations, when you are actually, say, traveling in a car and you want to listen to the stories, the stories that are not available as audio form, how do you do that? Then the bunch of technologies that transform the news, they actually make modifications to the news. These include stories, translating these stories into various forms, accessing stories, made available, accessible to Indian language users, for example, for that matter, any language users, and then summarizing the story, things of that kind, right? Then lastly, another group actually works on the commentary or news generation from the videos. This is the narrative sciences that we're talking about. So can you actually watch a story or some video and then come up with the textual version of that. Say, for example, there is a tennis match that's going on, and then by watching that video, can you actually compose a story and then sort of publish it whenever a milestone happens, right? For example, a match is over, or there's a midway, there's a certain set that is over. So can you actually publish a story immediately, instantly, without any intervention, right? So these are the bunch of technologies. So I don't want to go through many of these things because of the limitation of the time. I request the organizers to alert me when I need to stop, maybe 2 minutes before. And then until then, I'll actually talk about some of the interesting technologies that are available. So this is the application that I was talking about, the sports annotation, where there is, if there is a video that is going on, identifying the players, identifying the behavior of the players. So identifying the actions, for example, whether, what is the action? Is it out of the court thing? Is it, what kind of a ball it is, and then what happened? So the identifying these actions by analyzing the video, right? So, and automatically generating these captions and automatically coming up with descriptions. So that's whether it is tennis or cricket. I'm not going to get into the details of this, but then you can actually weave a story out of some live action that is in front of you. Imagine the same thing that is happening in actually a public setting, in outdoors. Some rides or something that is happening now, you have your camera on, it is capturing, not only it is reading, it's capturing the video, at the same time automatically it is generating a story, right? Imagine the possibility of that kind. Of course, translating from one language to another language is is an important aid or a tool for the vernacular journalists that are working in local languages, to take the best and the latest from more well-known languages, more widely used languages like English and so on, right? Another aspect that I wanted to really highlight today is individualism. So we have, the era of, say, New York Times or Times of India, of Bombay edition, or Trivandrum edition, or Hyderabad edition, or New York edition, these are all gone. So what we really need is the New York Times of Vasudeva Varma's edition, or New York Times that is actually for Manju Mathews edition, right? So for you as an individual, a special edition is made instantly, depending on what you like, what are the categories that you want to focus on, what really interests you, and what really kind of gives you a good surprise, right? So the interest and importance that is actually suitable to you at a personal level. So individualism is something that is very prominently being now achieved by many applications like e-commerce to the Netflix kind of consumer applications. It's also coming in a big way to news. So the personalized news and also the simplified news, what we call the news snacks now. So where, we don't want to really, there is no special time to sit and read the newspaper in the morning with tea anymore. So you want to really consume the news with a flip, flipping the stories one after one. And as you are waiting for a bus or a train, or when you are in a cab, or you are in between the meetings. So how do you actually get to the news snacks very quickly? So that would feed your hunger to know the latest things. And whenever you need things in detail, you can always go deeper. But ability to come up with this simplified news is a very important element that technology is enabling us, right? So that's where actually the news summarization comes in. So for example, there are 10 stories that are developing or recently has come in about, so Nevada a new election situation at this point in time in the last 10 minutes. So instead of reading these 10 stories one after one, is there a program that would actually reads all those programs for me, all those stories for me, and kind of gives me the summary of it, right? So this is what is an important thing for me, right? So news summarization is an important element, and we have a bunch of other technologies. I'm not going to get into those details, but I just wanted to talk about fake news for a minute. So important thing that we need to understand is how is this misinformation or fake news is generated, and how hard is it to detect this fake information, right? Fake news. So if it is generated by humans, right? So the humans with ill intention and humans without ill intention, by mistake, by casually, we must have produced some misinformation. And people who are done it with ill intention, they may be sophisticated people or they're not so sophisticated people. It's very clear that it's some news story that you read is fake story because they didn't do a good job, right? So that's one important aspect. Then obviously that's not where the buck stops, right? It's the bots who are generating these fake stories these days. And then again, same categories, bots with ill intention, bots without ill intention, bots that are very sophisticated and with ill intention, they are generating stories, and bots that are not so sophisticated, but they're generating stories, right? So there are actually studies that will tell you which one of these fake news are hard to detect, right? The humans without the ill intention, if they write stories, it's hard to detect as a fake story. And sophisticated bots with ill intention, if they create fake news, it is hard to detect. Other categories are relatively easy to detect, right? So I just wanted to end this. There is a way to counter the fake news by employing three kinds of techniques. One is looking at the content and figuring out how the language of the fake news is different from the language of regular stories. So content-based methods and propagation-based methods. Many of you are aware that fake news travels faster than the regular news. So how it is propagating in the network, social networks, that itself will give you what, whether it is, that information, the network propagation or the speed of spread, that itself will give you how, whether something is a fake news or not. Similarly, the information about the sources from where this news is generated and then who is actually instrumental in propagating this news. So modeling the sources of news will also give us these methods. So we have developed a bunch of algorithms that would use a combination or all of these methods, content-based methods, propagation-based methods, and user or source-based methods to detect the fake stories, right? So, of course, there are a bunch of sophisticated aspects here. We need to algorithms to detect the readability, to understand the tone of the story, sentiment that is actually expressed in the story, what is the stance of the story, and then any biases that are expressed in the story, and then are there any hidden agendas that is actually captured. So these are all a bunch of very sophisticated AI technologies or machine learning technologies that would understand the deep elements of a given, the textual description or any news story, and then kind of will come up with the classification models to distinguish or to separate fake news from the regular news. So, but anyway, so that is one of the applications of using AI in the news world. And then I'll actually I must have taken more time than what is allotted. Apologies for that. But then I'll be very glad to take a few questions.
Okay. Thank you, Professor, for the great opening session for the summit. And I'm sure our audience will have a lot of questions to ask you. And my colleague Tara CB will moderate the question answer session.
Good evening, Professor. Good evening, Professor. This is Tara Ravishankar. Shall I move on to the question answer session?
Sure, please.
I'll share the screen, sir. First question. From the "Content is King" quote by Bill Gates in 1996 to the "AI is Queen" quote in 2019, what would be the future of a newsroom and what would be the major opportunities for journalism students?
A very good question. Thank you for this, because of course the king and queen, when they live together, the world is, the kingdom will be ruled very well. If they're separate, things are going to be difficult, right? So this is also a very similar situation here. So AI is the queen and then content is the king. So they need to be in the same room, same palace. So given then your question is, in the newsroom, how they can live together without really quarreling with each other and then together producing some great, the content, right? So there are ways in which AI technologies are helping newsrooms in a very big way. So, for example, identifying um, the quality as well as the authenticity of the news that is flowing into the newsroom. So, what are the sources, analyzing the sources, analyzing the content, and also whether detecting whether it is fake or not, or misinformation, disinformation, or the or information that all of us can trust or not. So these are the things in which AI is kind of helping the newsroom. And again, we have worked with some of the bigger the news agencies that are actually applying some of these AI filters right at the beginning, right? As the, say, for example, from PTI, the news is flowing in. So this filter separates the news into two parts. One is the one that is potentially fake news, and then one actually which looks normal, right? So then people don't need to really do the fact checking for each and every story. They can only fact check only those stories that are marked, say, red, because there's a potential misinformation in there. So that is one aspect. Then the other one is essentially enhancing the productivity of, say, either the news journalist or editor. So all these things can be aided now with AI technologies. So yeah, that's a very good juxtaposition of king and queen metaphor. Very, very valid. A good question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Shall I move to the next question?
Sure.
This is your question. Don't you think that for better artificial intelligence practices, you need better human intelligence, especially in journalism, because it will be dealing with next generation lifestyle?
Yes. Yes. I wanted to really think about AI. For many of you, many of us in the society at large, think of AI as something that is out there. It's actually coming, and it's something alien that is coming and perhaps overtake humanity and rule us, and all kinds of fears, right? But please understand that AI is nothing but a piece of software that is created by us to make our lives better. It's just a piece of software like any other software that we use day in and day out, right? It has its limitations, and it is created now with very different kinds of techniques. For example, pull all the data together, and from the data comes the program. And that program acts as it is being taught by the existing data. So that's the only difference. That's only the paradigm shift between the traditional software and AI software. Other than that, it's actually, AI is a very dumb, piece of software. We give unnecessarily more credit to AI than it deserves in many cases. It's not intelligent. It actually is taking, several decades of effort by the best scientists in the world, and then the companies with the deepest pockets, and then universities that are having so much of intellectual power to create an AI program that would match some basic intelligence of human beings, right? So in that sense, AI still has a long way to go, even to match some of the cognitive abilities that we take it for granted today, right? In that sense, absolutely, there is, that whatever that we cannot do with lots of effort, we build tools in the form of AI programs to help us do. For example, web crawling is one simple example where we crawl the entire web with, like thousands of uh, uh, initiations or the instances of crawlers, and that would gather all the data and then present to us in the form that we like, right? It's one simple dumb program which is going from one URL to another URL, collecting all that information, aggregating it, and keeping it. It's very dumb, still very simple task, right? And we cannot do that. We do not have time to go through 5,000 URLs in 10 seconds and then get the information. So that is complementing our abilities. So there's we need to still, this needs to really complement each other. Human intelligence and so-called artificial intelligence need to complement each other in order to sort of, make progress in science.
Very interesting, sir. Due to time constraints, we are forced to move to the last question. Anyway, we are dumped with so many questions. I'm moving to the last question. How do we be ethical as journalists when AI involved in journalism?
A great question, I should say. These are the toughest times. The belief in media, the trust in reporting, the trust in general in what we are consuming today is at its lowest, perhaps. That's because the sources of the news are no longer trustworthy, right? They have the stance of each one of them are, like we cannot really, we cannot know, or we will not be able to understand what are the hidden agendas, okay, what to trust, so on and so forth. That in combination with abundance of news makes each one of us very nervous about information that we are receiving. Why is that? WhatsApp university is destroying our relations, the way that we understand things, the way we look at religion, the way that we look at politics, the way we look at the society, and so on. So now it's the it's time that has come to rebuild great fourth line that we don't see in terms of the Indian emblem that we all talk about, which is media, right? So the media has to be really coming back with the best people in the society getting into reporting, and best people in the business talking about the real issues not driven by the commerce, not by businesses, not by the hidden agendas, but something that's a truthful reporting. If that mindset happens, then the technology is here to help each and every one of them. Now you can create more authentic stories. You can create stories that are backed up with data. uh, the stories where you can get the references, the evidence, and the more authentic stories than you can ever could have done in the past, right? It's the human intention when it is matched with the computational machinery and then the technology that is around us, right? We will now be able to bring back the lost trust in the news world. So I'm very optimistic about it. The technology is only going to help us in a best possible manner to actually make the news world great again.
Thank you, Professor. You were very inspiring, and I think these concepts will definitely motivate our young generation of journalists. And now our HOD, Manju Mathews, will speak to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Varma, for the great insights on new technologies that are shaping our news industry, and also your great support to shape the young journalists of future, be very trustworthy and honest. Journalists and AI technologies need to work collaboratively to evolve effective tools that can benefit journalism. On behalf of the participants, thank you for your time and for the great session. We look forward to having you for advanced training events in the future. Thank you once again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.